In 1999, Nicholas Briggs, a lifelong Doctor Who fan, was able to obtain the rights to the character of Professor Bernie Summerfield from the Doctor Who novels. He started producing full-cast audio dramas through his company Big Finish, starring Lisa Bowerman. Later that year, he was able to receive rights to use the first two Eighth Doctors and their companions to use, and later that year, Big Finish released The Sirens of Time, getting Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy to reprise their roles as the Doctor, and the monthly range of Doctor Who audio releases was born. These audio dramas became a sort of an underground hit, so much so that they've lasted for 16 full years. Welcome back to the Beginner's Guide to Doctor Who, where I will be reviewing the finale to the first four Eighth Doctor audio dramas, Minuet in Hell. Minuet in Hell was written by Alan W. Lear and Gary Russell, directed by Nicholas Briggs, recorded on the 19th of May and the 2nd of July in the year 2000 at the Bristol recording location for Big Finish, and originally released in the monthly range in April 2001. Let's begin with Part 1. We open with the flapping of wings and Latin mumblings. A man, voiced by Paul McGann, begins monologuing on how the legends of Gallifrey speak of a place that is pure horror. The name of the world they speak of is Hell. He concludes that he is in Hell and there is no escape, and this scene is a great tone setter to open the story, which gives it a very creepy feel. We catch someone calling for Lucifer to arise. There's a devilish chant of hellfire, and the theme plays. At a meeting, Brigham Eliza Dashwood III and Dr. Dale Pargeter, played by Robert Jezik and Maureen Oakley, respectively, converse on how well of a turnout it is for the night's meeting of the Hellfire Club. Dale points out how many people are actually here, although it's supposed to be very exclusive. Dashwood explains that he got anyone that would be interested, and he also explains that he did not summon Lucifer, but Marcosius. But Dale has to leave quickly to work with sciencey stuff. Another man in the same room as the guy who did the opening monologue, played by Nicholas Briggs, mocks the monologuer and asks him to shut up because he has a headache. He explains himself to be a British journalist and says that this is an asylum, not hell. The monologuer says he must find a Charlie, and he can't remember what else he has to do. In a different place, someone asks if they can take the bed next to a girl wearing something Eleanor Roosevelt would wear. It takes the girl, Charlie Pollard, voiced by India Fisher, a minute to respond, and she struggles to remember who she is. Her name Charlie's on her brooch. The other girl introduces herself as Becky Lee Kowalczyk from Los Angeles. Charlie stresses that she can't remember anything other than the room she's in. Becky Lee explains that Charlie most likely was wandering at night and abducted by the police. They are called to attention by Dale Pargeter, who explains that she will be addressed as a superior mistress and that they will be put to work in the service of the community as prostitutes. But the audio, of course, being for kids, calls it being a pretty little satin bottom. They will be responsible for keeping everything clean, and that they won't be punished, except that by the gentlemen members of the club will punish them if they only see fit. Charlie remembers that she was with a friend, a doctor of some sort, she thinks. At a rally, Senator Waldo Pickering, played by Morgan Deere, runs into the strangest person to be in America at this point, Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethebridge-Stewart. You may remember the Brigadier from Terror of the Autons. The Brigadier questions why Pickering would be here to listen to a political opponent. Pickering says he's there because their host, Dashwood, is a cheat, and there's a chance that someone will actually shoot him. This is America, after all, and much less right below Washington, D.C. Dashwood takes the stage and makes a speech on how the 51st state, Malabulgia, and how they are here to open the Brigham Eliza Dashwood Laboratory of Alternative Mentalities. He also announces his intention to run for the first governor of the new state, and like any politician, the speech goes on for too long. So Pickering comments rather loudly how fit it is to be uttered in a loony bin. Dashwood points him out and glorifies him as a great senator, and makes him come up for a tour. He also calls the Brigadier up, due to him Brigadier being helped to oversee the creation of the new state. Pargeter tours at how they actually fix the mentally disabled, the PSI 859 facsimile regenerator. Pickering is not impressed, and the Brigadier compares it to a British prototype. Pargeter explains that it gives cerebral surgery, which Dashwood elaborates on that it usually wouldn't work with a normal machine. But this machine kills the brain after recording its contents onto a CD, taking it all out, storing it, and putting it all back in after the operation. The Brigadier and Pickering that Dashwood knows this stuff too well for just a political opponent. Pickering asks where they're hiding all the real loonies, so they all go down to the madhouse, and Pargeter warns them not to address any of them directly or put their hands through any of the bars. They go through the hall to people who are crazy, including a dog incinerator, a gay axeman, a woman who was able to bludgeon to death 6 people with a prosthetic leg. They get to a John Doe, the writer from earlier. He introduces himself as Gideon Crane, and he seems quite sane. The only oddity is that he thinks he knows the breeder, which isn't completely crazy. You may have seen his face somewhere, if you're British. Pargeter asks what he remembers, and he answers that he saw a big blue box appear out of nowhere. According to Pargeter's notes, he was running around naked at the streets, howling at the moon. But they decide to get him released just because he may have just been drunk. Everyone else tries to leave, and Pickering gives Pargeter her notes, and he tries to leave with them. Pargeter apologizes to the Brigadier and thanks him for calming Pickering down. The monologuer from the opening starts mumbling, and Pargeter says they're calling him Zebediah Doe, not to be confused with Crane. He's delusional, and the notes say he's been nothing but trouble since he's arrived. She asks his name, and he replies that he's the something, and he knows the Brigadier. He says he has a friend, and they must find a friend that he knows. Crane offers to talk to him back to reality, and Pargeter and the Brigadier agree and decide to leave. Zebediah says he has a faulty heart, and wonders if hearts are supposed to beat on the left side of the chest. Transition to the outside, where the Brigadier thanks Pargeter, and he apologizes for getting too close to one of the inmates, to Dashwood, and they talk politics, and the Brigadier says he's honored, and that he decided he must leave for the night. Dashwood says that Pargeter needs to keep an eye on him once he's left. The Brigadier gets back to his hotel, where he reports to his superiors that he has made initial reconnaissance on the PSI machine, and that no evidence has arisen that is being used for evil purposes, but the Institute seems to be somewhat illegal. This actually shows a scene that the Brigadier has difficulty keeping up with the times, and is very moving, considering the story takes place around 2003. He gets a message back that he's to make no mood, which he's annoyed with, and he decides to clean up for the night. The girls have changed into 18th century ball gowns and reveal cleavage, sadly only in audio form. I wish someone would animate this. And Charlie explains that the Hellfire Club was the prime of English aristocracy, and they would have devil worship and non-stop orgies, and they have to go into the gentlemen. Dale is enjoying herself, but she has to excuse herself to get back to her work. Dashwood is proud of her girls and decides to turn on the TV, where an ad comes on for the club, and Dale excuses herself. Charlie introduces herself to Dashwood, who notes her pretty looks. Crane wakes Zebediah outside his cell, and he's been sent to take him up to the lab for a lobotomy. Dashwood calls on Marcosius again for another spectacle. Zebediah is on the operating table and claims to be a doctor. Crane has gotten Pargeter a coffee. Crane starts to question if Gallifrey is his real home, and starts to mumble nonsense. They begin the lobotomy, and Crane steps too close to the PSI machine as it overloads. On to part 2. There's a reading from the Book of Revelation that is interrupted by a poem, and the screams of Charlie, and someone yelling, "Die!" Becky, Lee, and Charlie meet up at the club when Dashwood leaves. They are harassed by a dirty old man, whom Charlie slaps and is nearly whipped. But Becky Lee speaks some Latin, and a supernatural force attacks them, allowing all the other girls to leave. Charlie questions her about it, and she explains that she has power to turn the fear of the wicked against them using a mental technique. Charlie decides to get her clothes before they leave. Zebediah Doe crashes into the dustbin and runs into Lethebridge-Stewart, and he moans on how he knows him, and the Brigadier decides to help him back to the Institute, and as they are confronted by demons. Actual living demons. Charlie remembers her surname, Pollard, and Becky Lee explains that she's part of the Order of St. Peter, dedicated to fighting the supernatural. They arrive at the home of Senator Pickering and are invited inside, who happens to be Pickering being Becky Lee's grandfather. The Brigadier and Zebediah keep running. Dale has to put Crane into the cells again, and Dashwood, who's mad on the escaped patient, and acts like an abusive boyfriend to her. He says that he sent hell on his tail, and Dale wants him unharmed due to his psychic matrix being too large, so Dashwood has Marcosius call off the demons. After the demons disappear, the Brigadier decides to call a taxi to take him back. They get back, and Pargeter gets Zebediah back to his cell. The Brigadier asks if he can come in and check on him the next day, and is shown out. Becky Lee explains that she got a message that people were conjuring up demons, and she asks if Pickering has a VCR. She plays a tape that she stole from the Hellfire Club, showing the runners of the state doing dirty things, and after Charlie reveals that Dashwood is in charge of the club, Pickering says he will use this tape where it counts. The Brigadier emails his superiors about the demons he saw, and he advises them to send a team to assist with the problems, but they won't send anyone until there's definite evidence of PSI machine misuse. Zebediah remembers that he comes from the planet Gallifrey and that he would travel through time and space, which Crane tries to disprove him. Doe offers to show him something, and Crane suggests the TARDIS, which Crane was never told about. Pickering blackmails Dashwood, to cancel his running, and Dashwood starts playing the Minuet, and he explains that his family tree and agrees to write a statement as Pickering becomes paralyzed. Charlie starts to remember everything, her place in the R-101 crash. She was flying back to the TARDIS on Ramsay the Vortisaur, but the Doctor is missing from it all. Dashwood announces that the Hellfire Club will be going to war and that they all must be ready to be loyal to Dashwood and Lucifer. He summons Marcosius and has Partisher strap Pickering into the PSI machine. They transfer Marcosius into Pickering's body, putting Pickering into a coma. Crane muses that something must be happening in the lab while Doe has worked out that he must be a Time Lord in his eighth body called the Doctor, who travels in the TARDIS. And Crane points out that his insanity and how he can't be a Time Lord. Time Lords don't exist. Doe claims that he is the Doctor, but he asks Crane, "Who are you?" Marcosius arrives at Pickering's home as Charlie goes up to take a nap, and Becky Lee asks if she's noticed any Brits. Marcosius points her to the direction of Lethebridge-Stewart. Doe persists that he must be the Doctor, and Crane psychologically tortures him with the Doctor's history, naming many companions, and ends up stating that Crane himself is the Doctor. Now on to part 3. Doe questions if Crane could be the Doctor, which he convinces Doe that he must be the Doctor, and that Doe is insane. Marcosius bursts into Charlie's room in a rather humorous scene after Charlie asks that he isn't Pickering. Charlie does the smart thing and jumps out the window. Marcosius decides not to give chase, for fear the heart of Pickering will run out. The Brigadier reports that he will shortly try to regain entry to the Institute when there's a knock on his door. Becky leaves outside and asks if he's seen any demons lately, and she's invited inside. Charlie decides that she must find the TARDIS and remembers a face on the scanner, and decides to go try and jog her memory. Becky Lee and the Brigadier arrive at the alley where he was attacked by demons. Becky Lee notices a big blue box around the corner, but says nothing of it. The Brigadier explains that he is there to investigate if Pargeter and Dashwood are using the machine to alter psychic matrices of the brains. Becky Lee finds some sulfur, and the Brigadier thinks that Gideon Crane might actually be the Doctor. Doe has trouble figuring out how they got to America. Crane explains that the Doctor and Charlie decided to visit Grace Holloway in America from the enemy within. He decides to let Ramsay go in the vortex, who acts up crazy, and Charlie is thinking Charlie is food, due to the web of time splintering when she escaped death in the R-101. They open the doors and let Ramsay out, but can't get the doors to close and attempt an emergency materialization when the Doctor hurts his head. The next thing the Crane and Doe know was waking up in part 1. Crane thinks that the symbiotic nuclei of the Doctor was spilled into Crane and Doe. And Doe must be a perfect facsimile if Crane is the Doctor, so they decide to play 20 questions. Dashwood is frustrated with the telethon, and Pargeter explains that the comatose patients will arrive and that they will take Doe's matrix into those people. Dashwood has her transfers Pickering mine onto a CD. Pargeter asks when they can have a date and leaves. Marcosius comes out of the shower and coaxes out that Dashwood has no feelings for Pargeter and is just using her, and he sends away Marcosius. Becky Lee explains that the Hellfire Club must be using electricity for conjuring and not traditional methods. Charlie runs into Pargeter at the club, and she offers to get her some clothes. She's only in a nightgown, and is caught by Marcosius, and they try to drag her to where the other horrors. Crane asks about Victoria and what family she left in the Fury from the Deep, and the only answer that the Doctor gets is the last question about the Blinovitch limitation effect. Crane worries about Doe's psychosis, and Doe brings up that the real hymn is on a CD that they'll need to find. Dashwood sings Minuet in the tune to Minuet that it's Dashwood for the White House, let the anthem sing. Dashwood for the White House, let the children ring. And Pargeter shows him the girls, and he notices Charlie, and has her bathed and dressed in costume 17, Queen of Hell. Pargeter is mad that Dashwood would marry Charlie, and she leaves her mind over and has Marcosius take care of Charlie, who reveals that he thrives on bad emotions, which is very weird for a demon. Pargeter snaps at Dashwood for dress 17 and Charlie, and Dashwood tricks her into thinking that Marcosius is just lying to her. She's given holy water to send back Marcosius, and that Charlie is for Lucifer. Charlie is suspicious of Marcosius being an actual demon. Pargeter takes Doe away to go to this PSI machine. The Brigadier has trouble at security, but they get past it as he sends Becky Lee to find Crane, as Pargeter meets him. Becky Lee goes down to the cells and releases Crane, who may just be the doctor. The Brigadier and Pargeter listen to Marcosius having Pickering stand down, and the Brigadier can't get a word in on Doe. Becky Lee fills the doctor in on the situation, and she decides to get the facility evacuated using the fire alarm. Pargeter hooks up Doe to the PSI machine and starts extracting his matrix. Dashwood meets with the club over that he will be the new governor, and he announces that he will unite himself with Lucifer and unveils Charlie. He goes to shoot her, and she is pulled into hell. Meanwhile, Doe's mind is completely extracted from his body and is put into the bodies of the catatonics, who moan as they wake up, claiming to be the doctor. Now on to part 4. The catatonics drowsily wake up, all claiming to be the doctor, but Doe comes to the realization that everyone in the universe is the doctor except for him. Charlie is thrown out of hell for already being dead. Dashwood tries to wake up his queen, whom he sends to his private chambers. Becky Lee pulls the fire alarm and the cell doors open. Pargeter asks Marcosius where Dashwood is due to the building being on fire. He leads her to him, being with his new bride, feeding off her fear and anger. Marcosius calls to Becky Lee, who sees through the ruse. She asks what he's done with her grandfather. Charlie wakes up and Dashwood can't believe that Hell rejected her, saying that she must leave. Dashwood still wants to get into her pants, though, and the Brigadier bursts in and exposits that Dashwood's plans to get to the White House using the PSI machine. Pargeter comes into the room as the Brigadier and Charlie leave. She's pissed at that Dashwood won't marry her. The doctor goes to pick up Doe, who still thinks he's a nobody. The doctor tries turning on the PSI machine, using his Time Lord brain to activate it, and Doe pulls a ruse and hooks up Crane, and is sorry that he had to have their mind fuse. Doe actually being the doctor, and Crane being a real journalist. Marcosius has Becky Lee chained to a wall, and she tries to bring out his greatest fear, and she asks for death. The Brigadier and Charlie go into the PSI machine and go over to Crane, who the Brigadier thinks is the doctor, but they're confronted by the real doctor, and they decide to go. Pargeter demands that Marcosius makes Dashwood change his mind. Marcosius looks inside her mind, feeding on her fears of all the slim, attractive girls, and how much she hates them all. He makes her visualize taking a whip and beating the girls, and she goes insane, and Marcosius uses it against her, killing her using Becky Lee's chanting in Latin to expel Marcosius. The doctor tries to wake Crane up while explaining that it was his mind that was flooded with bits of the doctor. Crane wakes up and explains that he's coming to actually investigate the PSI machine and that the Brigadier's contacts are in league with Dashwood. The doctor has them stay behind to return all the minds into the right patients after some technobabble, and due to Gideon having the doctor's memories, he can tell while everyone else is going to stop Dashwood with a total of 20 minutes left. Dashwood is going through tests for the night when the doctor, Charlie, and the Brigadier come in to watch. The Brigadier's heart starts to hurt due to the lights, and an assistant takes him to a place where they can watch in the control room. Crane works rapidly to maintain the memories and save the patients, and he thinks he's made it. Marcosius decides to torture Becky Lee with a chainsaw when the mind of Pickering gets back inside its body. Pickering is, of course, confused on the situation. The Brigadier's health starts to fade when he gets a drink, and the assistant wants to make sure that he's okay. The doctor wonders what will happen if Dashwood's real personality were to go public, and Dashwood monologues about how bad the people that are voting for him actually are. And as it turns out that the Brigadier has broadcast Dashwood's monologue on how bad the public was going. Charlie says she thinks the TV is fun, and the Brigadier, of course, really wasn't in bad health, as he says that he'll come down. Dashwood surrenders as the doctor says that the police will investigate all of his institutions, and Dashwood decides to rush to his car to try and hide. Becky Lee is waiting in Dashwood's car, and when he gets in, she and Pickering have the police ready to make an arrest. Dashwood has his portal to hell and is ready to send them all there, including Charlie, the doctor, and the Brigadier. They let him go, and the doctor realizes Marcosius will be looking for a new body in Gideon Crane. Marcosius goes after Crane and questions him on what he was doing, and Dashwood rushes in and explains that he'll need to get away in a demon's body. But Crane has messed with the machine, so Marcosius can't. As everyone else bursts in, and the doctor explains Marcosius isn't a demon, but an alien. He advises against using the portal. The doctor explains that Marcosius is just dust that feeds on bad thoughts and desires, becoming a physical manifestation. He also says that the Hellfire Club wasn't a devil-worshipping cult, and only only people that got a little drunk on weekends, and all the devil worshipping stuff was propaganda done by political opponents. Marcosi agrees that he's just a physical manifestation, and the PSI machine starts to overload and explodes. Everyone but Dashwood and most of the patients make it out alive. The doctor and Charlie decide to leave without getting run into the police. Charlie goes down to the TARDIS, and the doctor and the Brigadier talk of the glory days and how great it is that the Brigadier was there, and the doctor leaves. The doctor and Charlie take off in the TARDIS, and Charlie asks why the demons said she was already dead. The doctor says that she doesn't know what they meant, probably that they were just talking strangely. They decide to go somewhere quiet to rest. Final thoughts? Big Finish always does a great job producing audio adventures, and this time is no exception. Paul McGann's Eighth Doctor is a joy to listen to, giving stories to a character that only had 2 on-screen appearances. The relation between the amnesiac Doctor and Nicholas Briggs' Gideon Crane is a great mystery. If this is your first audio to buy and you don't know the twist coming, Charlie and Becky Lee's subplot was great to hear and progressed the overall arc of the Charlie paradox, which, although only mentioned a handful of times during the story, made the character aware that something had to be wrong with what she was doing, considering she got out of a fixed point in time where everyone died. The supporting cast is great, although Pargeter's descent into madness is very quick and happened on a dime, and some of the American accents weren't the best. Also, some of the more adult concepts are obviously toned down, such as the pretty little satin bottoms obviously being prostitutes, and the demons, of course, featuring very heavily, weren't portrayed, and being portrayed as evil, it's sort of a cop-out that it's actually aliens. All in all, I have to give that Doctor Who, Minuet in Hell, 90% for its great story, mystery, supporting cast, and companion, but bad twist, accent, and toned-down adult themes. I recommend this to anyone who wants to get into the Big Finish audios. Doctor Who Minuet in Hell is available as a download only on BigFinish.com in the Doctor Who monthly range. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time with the Ninth Doctor's Part 1 review for Rose.